What's up, and welcome to another episode of Gizmo Slip Tech. Today, we're talking about the Alienware X15 versus the Alienware X17. I am personally really excited about the Alienware X17 for a number of reasons, but mainly because it is so thin and yet it has such a high TDP and high performance internal components because of Alienware's new thermal design, which we're going to go over in detail. So in this video, the goal is to go over all of the specs, all of the potential configuration options that you'll be able to buy. We're going to go over the current available models that you can get and what I think of them. And I'm also going to talk about the actual X17 that I ordered, which I think is going to replace my Scar 15 that I've got right here. I'm still using the Scar 15, but I'm thinking this new Alienware will be a suitable replacement for this laptop. But I don't necessarily think the Alienware X17 is for everyone. Definitely not. All right, so first up, you can see I have added these laptops to the RTX 3000 spreadsheet. This is a comparison shopping spreadsheet. It's a tool I created to help people find which gaming laptop they may want to buy and be able to compare similarly priced models. If your budget's around 1500 to 2000, with this spreadsheet, you'll be able to see all of the available models in that price range. Now, some of these links are affiliated links on the spreadsheet. Some of them are not as well. I include non-affiliated links on here as well to be as helpful as possible. But if you do decide to buy a laptop at any point, you can choose to use some of these links right before you buy so that it goes to help support my channel. That said, no pressure to buy ever on my channel. Only buy when you think you found a laptop that you think you're going to love and is going to dramatically improve your gaming experience. Three new Alienwares available. We've got the M15 R6, which I'm going to talk about in detail in another video, but this is Alienware's new replacement for the M15 R4, basically, but in some ways, this may not be an upgrade because the TDP potential on this machine is actually lower than on the R4. So you might see higher frames per second with the M15 R4, very interestingly enough. Um, though you do have the new 11th gen Intel in here, which is very promising. I've been very impressed with the new 11th gen Intel in the GP66, which I'm currently working on a detailed review of. Now, the Alienware X15, awesome in many ways, but there are a lot of compromises on the X15 compared to the X17. Lower TDP on the GPU, probably lower TDP on the CPU, lower CPU options, but you still have a very high price tag on this particular unit. So you're kind of looking at basically picking this laptop up if you want something that's just insanely thin. This thing is thinner even than a Razer Blade 15 Advanced. If you're looking for like the top tier performance, I would tend to shy away from the X15. Okay, and then last but not least, we have the X17. Now, all of the available configs that you can buy right now are just the ultra high-end, high spec with very high-end displays, processors, RAM, SSDs. You got 2 TB SSD, 32 gigs of dual channel XMP 3466 hertz RAM, which is the fastest RAM I've seen in a laptop so far to date. And then you got an RTX 3080 and then the i9 11980HK with a 4K 120 hertz display, and it's running 3802. Now, looks absolutely freaking awesome, this configuration. The only thing I'm a bit worried about is I'm not sure what the display connection situation is yet. I have asked Alienware. I'm going to add a pinned comment. I've asked Alienware 4 different questions. Will the configs on the X15 and 17 that don't have advanced Optimus just be using regular Optimus, direct connection, or a MUX switch? Very important because this unit, in particular the X17 R1 with the 4K display, I don't know what kind of connection it is. Is it Optimus, direct connection, or MUX? And that will dramatically affect the user, because what if it's just a direct connection? You don't have good battery life. If it's Optimus, that's going to reduce CPU-bound game performance. And then if it has a MUX, that's nice, but it's not quite as nice as Advanced Optimus because you have to reboot to switch between the two modes. Now, I want to know what the TDP is on the CPU for the different models, if they can tell me. What SSD sizes are compatible with the laptop? And I did find that out. It's a 2280. So pretty standard long PCIe SSD size. And then will the RAM be soldered or user swappable? I'm very curious about that as well. All right, so let's go over the Alienware X15 tech specs first. What are all the configuration options that you can get? Starting with the processor, you can get an i7 11800H or the i9 11900H. So you're basically you can't get the highest end model, the 11980HK. And now you can get Windows 10 Home or Pro, and you can get up to 32 gigs of RAM. Again, I'm not sure if these are user swappable RAM options or if they're soldered onto the motherboard. Waiting to hear back from that. Pinned comment answer in the video description down below whenever I hear back from them. Now we have two PCIe SSD slots, so you can go up to 16 terabytes of storage if you upgrade it yourself, or 4 terabytes of storage if you go through Dell. Now you can get an RTX 3060, 3070, or 3080 in here, and here is our TDP targets. So you have a base wattage of 70 watts on the RTX 3060 with a 20 watt boost up to 90. For the 3070 and 3080, you have a 90 watt base with a 20 watt boost, so you get up to 110. So what that means is that this Alienware X15 is really not an ultra high performance laptop. This is more just really targeting in on the super thin. Do you want the most performance for the size and thickness of your laptop? That's basically what this laptop is really targeted towards. Now, for the display options, we can get 165 hertz, 1080p, and this is going to come with regular Optimus. Then we have a 360 hertz Full HD with G-Sync and Advanced Optimus, and a 240 hertz QHD with G-Sync and Advanced Optimus. So if you are a very competitive player, I definitely would recommend the 360 hertz Full HD or the 240 hertz QHD option here. Now, the QHD option has the best brightness, over 400 nits, with 99% of the P3 color gamut, which is very similar to the Adobe color gamut. So basically, it's going to be a very colorful and bright screen for that QHD 240 hertz. So I think that's definitely the best screen option. Taking a look at the X15 ports, we have the power port here on the left, and then on the right, we have a headphone port. And then on the back, we have HDMI 2.1, which will allow you to output to 4K 120 hertz, USB-C with a display port, a micro SD card slot, a Thunderbolt 4 with USB-C power delivery, and then we have a USB-A on the back as well. So only one USB-A, but two USB-Cs. So what that means is the ports on the X15 are very limited. You don't have an Ethernet port, you don't have a full-size SD card slot, you only have one USB-A. I really wish they had managed to squeeze a second USB-A on here, but honestly, USB-Cs are the future, so you're definitely more future-proofed having two USB-Cs than, say, two USB-As and only one USB-C. Now, taking a look at the design for the X15, we have a white exterior on the top lid, the back casing, and the under part of the chassis here, as well as the little rubber feet on the bottom here. Now, it looks like we have a RGB light up touchpad here, like it had on the Area 51M. And we do have Windows Hello in the webcam, and it is a 720p webcam. Hopefully, it's a high quality 720p webcam, though. Now, for the keyboard, the X15 has a solid setup. You have media keys right here on the right side, and then you have home, end, and delete keys on the top. So you have dedicated buttons for those. Your page up and page down will be on your arrow keys. Now, it's going to be a per key RGB backlit keyboard, but keep in mind the X15 is not a mechanical keyboard. It's a chiclet style with a little bit less key travel than you'll get on the X17. Continuing on with the X15 specs, you can see that we have the Lunar Light High Endurance Color Coat and Silky Smooth Finish option, and we have Alienware's Cryotech cooling technology, which I will go over in detail here in a moment. Now, we do have Windows Hello on the X15 and X17. Now, Windows Hello is a super convenient way to log into your laptop. I really, really love it. Now, this is pretty cool. They're including a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet dongle already included for USB-C to Ethernet. So you don't even have to get a dongle with the X15. Now, we have an 87 watt hour battery, and I really hope that the Alienware battery life is really, really good this time around, especially since this is such a thin and light laptop with Advanced Optimus in it. I'm expecting some killer battery life, especially considering it's an 87 watt hour. Now we have a 240 watt power adapter. That should be plenty because we're dealing with some lower wattage GPUs in this X15. Now, depending on how you configure it, it can weigh from 5 to 5.2 pounds and is only 0.64 inches thick or 0.626 inches thick if you get one of the thinner panels. So overall, I like the specs on the X15, but I'm a gaming enthusiast that wants the most power possible, not the most performance in a portable package. So it's not really my style of a machine, but I can see how the X15 is going to really appeal to a lot of people out there. If you were looking at the Zephyrus G15 or maybe the MSI GS66 and you were wanting better screen options or higher TDPs on the GPU, I feel like the X15 is going to appeal to you a little bit more because you get a bit more wattage to the GPU, which is going to help boost some performance. Now, taking a look at the Alienware X17 exterior design, we have a 17 on the back, the Alienware head logo that lights up. We got the RGB circular strip. This actually has 100 RGB lights in it. It's pretty insane. We have most of the ports here on the back with the power port and headphone ports on the sides. Now, just like the X15, we do have a black interior with the white on the top and bottom. And overall, I think the styling for the X17 is really good. It has a fairly thin profile at 0.83 inches roughly, which is exceptionally thin considering we have a 150-watt RTX 3080 in this laptop. Now, for the keyboard layout, I'm not a huge fan of the fact that they just carbon copied the 15-inch keyboard onto the 17-inch chassis. In my opinion, it's much better if you can get a number pad on a 17-inch chassis. There's just a lot of wasted room on the left and right sides here. Makes me a little bit disappointed. Now, I do see what is likely speaker grills here, but I don't know if those are speaker grills. Those might be fan intakes. We'll have to see when we get the laptop in hand. Now, it looks like we do also have an RGB light up touchpad. So how does the X15 stack up to the X17? Let's take a look. For CPUs, you can get the same base i7-11800H. Now, keep in mind that this 11800H is possible to overclock if the manufacturer allows you to do so. And I wouldn't be surprised if Alienware unlocks it and lets us do that, but there's no way to know right at this point. MSI did let us do that in the GP66, but the GP66 is so thermally limited, you can't really do much overclocking on it. Now, we do have the i9-11900HK. Now, this processor is going to be probably the fastest processor that you can buy. I do expect it to outperform the Ryzen 5000 5900HX by just a little bit in multi-core performance, but by quite a lot in gaming performance. We'll see. We need to benchmark it. I have yet to see good, solid benchmarks for a high TDP 11900HK processor. Now, for RAM, you can get 32 gigs of XMP 3466 memory or 64 gigs of 3466 memory. Absolutely insane memory speeds. I'm expecting this to really boost 1080p gaming performance if you go with the 1080p display option. Now, if you are going to go for QHD or 4K gaming experiences, upgrading your memory to the XMP memory may not be as necessary, though it still will probably boost your frame rate a bit in CPU-bound games. But when you play at those higher resolutions, you're just a lot less likely to be CPU-bound. Now, for storage, you can go from 256 gigs all the way up to 4 terabytes in RAID 0. We have two PCIe SSD slots in this laptop as well. Now, taking a look at the TDP of the RTX graphics cards in this unit, we have a 115-watt RTX 3060, boosting up to 130 watts. Two giant thumbs up. That's awesome. I really look forward to seeing how that GPU performs. Now, the RTX 3070 can go from 125 up to 140. Also awesome. Maxing out the potential of the RTX 3070 should get over 11,000 in time spy. Now for the RTX 3080, the base TDP is 150 watts. I love it because this laptop is so thin, only 0.84 inches thin. Absolutely freaking insane. And it can boost up to 165 watts on top of that. This laptop may be a super thin laptop, but at the same time, it may be equal to the most powerful, chunky monster machine laptops out there. I love what Alienware is doing on the X17. At least from a tech specs perspective, we'll have to see how it actually functions in real life. Now, for the 17.3-inch display, we have two full HD options, one at 165 Hz and one at 360 Hz. The 360 Hz display comes with G-Sync and Advanced Optimus. Now, the 4K display is a 120 Hz 4ms response rate with 500 nits of brightness and 100% Adobe RGB color gamut. That sounds so awesome on a 17-inch display, though 4K is overkill. I wish they'd just gone with a QHD display here instead of 4K because really don't think you can see the extra detail on a laptop display with a 4K resolution. I did personally buy this display option. Now, the full HD panels are supposed to have 300 nits brightness and 100% sRGB color gamut, which to me is it's enough to satisfy most gamers, but this is a super premium laptop, and you can get a QHD 400 nit 240 hertz display option in a 15-inch chassis. The full HD options just make me a bit of a sad panda because I really want that QHD 240 hertz option. Like if I could get that display option, I would pick that over the 4K 120 hertz any day of the week. Maybe there'll be more display options available in the future. I think from a pure gaming enjoyment perspective, that 4K 120 hertz option will be the best, though you probably will just game at QHD resolution rather than 4K pretty much all of the time because you won't see a difference. And also, you get much better frame rates in QHD than 4K, though it will be able to play 4K games fairly well in most titles on maximum settings even, but it's just not going to be as high a frame rate, and I tend to prefer higher frame rates. Now for our port selection, on the left side we have our power port, which is nice and convenient to be able to plug in. On the right side, on the very back, we have our headphone port. The thermals are the priority on this laptop as well as the X15. You can see that because they didn't put any ports on the side. That's kind of a con, really. If you need to plug in a USB-A, you're going to have to reach around to the back and plug it in, which is going to be a bit annoying. Now, the ports on the back are very impressive. We have a mini display port 1.4, a micro SD card slot, which I really wish was a full-size SD card slot. Then we have a USB-A 3.2. Then we have an HDMI 2.1, a USB-C display port with power delivery. Then we have a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, another USB-A 3.2, and then we have a USB-C Thunderbolt 4 with power delivery. So you have two ways you can charge it. Now on the X17, you can get a standard chiclet with 1.5 millimeters of key travel, which is going to be good. I think it's probably like your standard laptop style keyboard, or you can get the Cherry MX mechanical laptop keyboard with 1.8 millimeters of travel. That is the type of keyboard that's coming on the unit that I ordered. Now we do have Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2 on this laptop. And then for the battery, we have the same 87 watt hour battery with a 240 watt form factor adapter or a 330 watt form factor adapter, probably depending on which GPU you order with the laptop. If you get the RTX 3080, you're almost for sure getting the 330 watt. Now, for the dimensions, you get a little bit thinner chassis with the Full HD 360 hertz panel. And for the weight, this thing is very chunky. Comes in at 6.65 pounds or up to 7.05 pounds, but it is exceptionally thin with a small overall form factor and profile. I'm guessing that the internal heat pipe design has caused the weight to go up quite a bit for the laptop's size. Taking a look at the thermal design, this is the reason why the laptop weighs so much. Just look at these big, beefy, thick heat pipes. Now, Alienware has done a number of things to try to improve the thermal cooling efficiency in order to make this laptop so thin and light. Now, first of all, I want to point out that we have two very large shared heat sinks that will go to the back exhaust fans. Now, we do have thicker heat fins to dissipate more heat out the two back exhausts. And then on the side of the laptop, we'll have a double wide exhaust that's going to be a bit thinner. And we're going to have a dedicated heat pipe to the GPU and a dedicated heat pipe to the CPU. So what this means is we have a 2/3 shared heat pipe design on this laptop, which I really like that because when you ramp all of the power basically to the GPU, it allows you to push the GPU a bit harder and still maintain better temperatures when the CPU is not ramping that hard. And then when you have very little GPU power utilized, you can really ramp up that CPU performance for the maximum potential. All right, so Alienware is claiming that Element 31, an industry first Alienware exclusive gallium silicon thermal interface material, is offering 25% improvement in thermal resistance. Now, they're saying that this is going to work more efficiently than previous solutions, pulling heat away from the CPU with double the energy storage capability over the previous generation. So the idea is Element 31 will double the time it takes to increase the temperature on the CPU by 45 degrees. I don't really care about how long it takes for the temperatures to ramp up as much because, if it takes 10 seconds instead of 5 seconds to ramp up or 20 seconds instead of 10 seconds to reach maximum temperature, that's pretty much irrelevant compared to what the sustained thermal dissipation is on the laptop. If they can consistently move the heat out of the laptop using these 4 fans and really big heat pipes, then I think that the overall solution is going to be very, very impressive. Now, I also want to point out that the X17 is utilizing these vapor chambers to help move the heat to the heat pipe. So you've got this Element 31 connecting with the vapor chamber, which is connecting with the heat pipes, which is going out to a 4-fan design. So I'm anticipating that if this thing is actually as awesome as it looks on the design side, that we might be seeing exceptionally good thermals on an Alienware device where we can push higher TDPs on the CPU and GPU perhaps at the same time and still have reasonable temperatures on the device. Now, Alienware did send over a video explaining the airflow situation. So you can see we've got air coming out the sides, these big long side vents, and then we have air coming out the back as well. And then if we speed the video up, it flips the laptop over. And as you can see on the back, we have multiple fan intakes. So we've got intakes on the sides, right in front of the double wide heat pipes here. And then we have intakes on the bottom as well. Here, it's also indicating that you're going to be able to pull air in from the top, it looks like, by the keyboard. So there may be 3 different ways that the air will travel into the laptop. And I think this thermal design is going to be really, really awesome. Now, something else I want to mention is Alienware has been designing their own custom VRMs to basically make this laptop as thin as possible, uh, and also to maintain better temperatures, be hyper efficient. Hopefully, will help prevent thermal buildup, and hopefully also help the longevity of the laptop under long, stressful loads. The laptop won't overheat or short circuit nearly as easily if you have strong and healthy VRMs. So to sum up the X15 versus the X17, basically the X15 is designed to be like this super premium high-end performance or like close to high-end performance in just an insanely thin laptop design. Like think about as thin as like a MacBook Pro, but you can actually play games on it and have 110 watts of GPU power, which should be really good performance with an RTX 3070, but I'm kind of leaning away from recommending paying the extra for the 3080 model just because the amount of performance you gain is more minimal when you are really limiting the TDP on the RTX 3080. So the better bang for the buck options for sure will be the 3060 and 3070 versions of the X15. Now, for the X17, I think this machine has the potential to be the highest performance laptop on the market, period. Like putting up the best frame rates right up there with the MSI GE76, but maybe even a little bit better in some games because this can go all the way up to 165 watts of power. And then when you compare the GE76 versus the X17 on a thermal design standpoint, it seems like Alienware has prioritized their CPU thermal cooling solution at a much higher priority, which what that means is you're going to be able to push higher TDPs in CPU bound games, get higher clocks, and potentially get some real overclocking done on the i9 processor, maybe. Especially if you get lucky with the Silicon Lottery, you might be able to get a good, decent overclock running on the machine, and really crank out the frame rates in those CPU-bound games, especially if you undervolt. Like undervolting on the 11th gen is for real. That GP66 undervolts really, really well. So basically, I think the X17 has the potential to be the top dog in terms of not only is it a very thin and light and premium laptop, but it also has the best overall performance of any laptop currently, except maybe something super chunky like a Clevo laptop with the RTX 3080 and the desktop CPU. Overall, I think if there's any cons to this laptop, it's definitely the port location being so far on the back, and then also the keyboard design on the X17 just doesn't strike me as amazing because we don't have a number pad on a 17-inch chassis and we have all this extra room. Yeah, but overall, I love the thermal design idea. I love the fact that it's going to be so thin and that we've got some really interesting display options on the X15 and X17. And that we have advanced Optimus on these laptops as well, which is just two giant thumbs up. So I think the X17 will be my own personal laptop in the future, but I don't think it's necessarily for everyone. It's going to have an extremely high price tag to it, especially if you get it kitted out with all of the top stuff. I think that a lot of other laptops will offer a lot better bang for the buck. So basically, I think the X17, especially at the highest end config models, are going to kind of be like competing with the Zephyrus Duos with like just the extravagant extra features and people that have very high budgets for laptops. Let me know in the comments what you think about the X15. Is it too overpriced? And then you have the X17. Do you think the X17 will be the top performance laptop that you can buy? I'm leaning towards yes for right now, but we may see some bigger, beefier machines come out in the near future. Let me know in the comments down below. I'm really curious what you all think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of my content in the future. That's it for this detailed analysis. I'll see you in the next one. Brandon out. Huzzah.